FOGS, former Origin greats. Three small words that mean so much. For many Queenslanders, the dream of joining that elite group is one that burns from a young age. Making that dream become a reality can be life-changing. The FOGS started as a dream largely in the eyes of two men who never joined that elite group, but their dream became a reality and the organisation known as FOGS. The two men who had that dream, had that vision, were the late great Dick Tosser-Turner and Alan Graham. These two men laid the foundation that so many have since built upon to this day. Since 1997, FOGS has helped foster the game, help former players, and actively mentor Indigenous people and communities throughout the state. Well, Alan, thanks very much for your time. Take us back to those early days. Where did that first seed of the FOGS start?
Yeah, it goes back a long way, Mark. Tosser, as we know, who's the godfather of FOGS and of Origin, he and I became extremely close during the Crusher days and post-Crusher days, probably more importantly, because a lot of challenges that we had to face then, and I think our friendship really bonded from there. So we became good friends and remained so right through till, unfortunately, when he passed. But we go back in those days, and because he had very intimate connections with most of the Origin heroes and the legends of Origin, he was in touch with them. And one of the things we were talking one day, one of the things we realised is that these guys, and this is 97, some of them played in the first game of Origin in 1980. There were two big issues. One, a lot of them hadn't even seen each other since 1980. But the most important thing was a lot of them could not get a ticket for State of Origin. And because tickets went so quickly in the stadium in those days, and we were only, I think, 42,000 people, they went like that. These guys who sort of started it all up and put their body on the line and created this golden era of rugby league for Queensland couldn't get a ticket. So we decided in 97 that we'd do a reunion. And so what we did was we underwrote the purchase of 100 tickets from the QRL, and we arranged to get those before they went on sale. And then we set about contacting as many of the FOGS, or the former Origin players, as we could. They weren't FOGS in those days, we didn't have a name, but as many of those players that did play. So we organised a reunion up at the Caxton, and that was a dinner pre-game, and then they all walked down, and we had a special seating area for them. And it was just amazing. Like I said, some of these people hadn't seen each other for 17 years. Some did not even recognise some of the others. Steve Stacey was a classic. Remember he used to run along with that long, blonde, flowing hair. That wasn't the case. I remember him coming along. He had this really short, cropped hair. It was dark. He had a leather jacket on. He looked like some sort of bikie. And no one knew who he was. And there were a few others like that. But over time, we saw the benefit of that. And so that was a real success. I think the fact that these guys had got back together, there was a genuine collegiate interest in, trying to stay together. And then Tosser and I sitting down looking at, all of the things that we could do from there, what the benefits were about having this group together, the long-term benefits of, hey, this was a special thing, Origin. It's a special spirit, it's a special camaraderie. Unless you played Origin, people wouldn't really understand exactly what it was. And so all of these people had that, that combined benefit of understanding all that. And so from there, we then spoke about doing some regular events. So we started doing some charity events. We also did some work on memorabilia, because one of the other things in those days was that the players weren't really compensated sufficiently for the memorabilia they may have signed. Someone will come in, get them to sign 100 jerseys, and they'd be lucky to see a free jersey, let alone any benefit from the money that would generate. So we started doing a lot of work on that, and then over time, and obviously with influence of people like the Genos and Gillies and Wally, and all of those people had a very strong interest in it. We then decided that we would form this organisation, this company called Former Origin Greats. And so we set about setting up all of those arrangements to get a proper company formed. I think from memory, and I can't be 100% on this, but I'm fairly certain we were one of the first organisations to actually give players a number. And that actually came out of necessity because we wanted to give them a membership number, and it was like, well, what number do we give people? And that's when we had the debate about Arthur having to be number one, which no one had an argument with, but everyone else number became their position and when they were picked. And that system has followed right through, and it's used by all the big sporting organisations around the world now. But great to think that someone like Arthur was number one of a very special group of people. So that was pretty much how it started. I think you've always got to recognise the influence Tosser had. He was the glue. He was like the honeypot, and people gravitated to him. He had their confidence. He had that ability to bind them all together to make sure everyone had a collective goal. There was no room for egos, no room for self-interest. One of the things we found over the years, and we tried so hard over a long period of time to help New South Wales get a similar system set up down there. We even, at one stage, gave them a licence to use the FOGS name. And we made that a formality. It was a proper deed where we'd signed that over to them, allow them to use it. And despite their good intentions and some great people, I've got to tell you, that were working down there, some of those New South Wales players should have been Queenslanders. They were that good, both in terms of their ability, but even just their spirit. They were just great people. And but despite their best intentions, they couldn't get that central group together, and they kept ending up with all these little splinters around the place. And so here they are. What's that? Nearly 30 years on, and still don't have anything comparable. And we've had them up here. People like Benny and Steve Roach and those guys, and they walk in here and they're just amazed at what FOGS has got, and just wish that they had something similar.
And all from Alan wanting to get tickets to a game for former players. Exactly. And for example, we did a couple of other things. We actually gave them in those days chambray shirts for football players were all the rage, and I've still got mine. It was the very first FOGS reunion, and so just little things like that. But I think it was just the chance for them to be back together after all that time, but then to be able to go and see what they'd created or helped create. And know that they were able to then stay in touch with that circle. So look, that was sort of the the germination of FOGS. Obviously, it progressed over time. Like I said, we've got an amazing group of people led by Tosser, but all the other people that have been on the board over all those years and the amount of work that they put in. I think it was after about maybe 8 or 9 years that we got enough cash behind us to put in our first full-time employee, which was Gino. And so Gino's first office was a desk in the hallway outside my office. So that was the first formal FOGS office in Queensland, but then progressed, since then, Gino and Debbie have just done an absolutely amazing job. You look around what the building is here. You think about what they've been able to do over that period of time. Obviously diversified a bit, from the programs we were running in those days to a stage where, they're running programs right across the state, having a big impact on a lot of lives, around Queensland, which was part of them giving back, FOGS being able to give back for the support and the generosity that they've had from the people of Queensland. So, it's been a great outcome. So when you were at Caxton Street before that Origin match and, you got everyone back together, did you and Tosser sort of immediately think, we got something here, or did it something that sort of germinated? Yeah, I think it was a germination. It was probably a little bit after that because we didn't know what to expect. Yep. As I say, the first piece was, well, let's get them all together and let's make sure they've got a ticket and something good to eat, The Farquhars, obviously, always the go-to people when you want to do anything around rugby league or Origin. So, you put an invitation out to guys to go for a steak at the Caxton,
and then go and watch a game of Origin. It's pretty irresistible.
Yep.
Idea. So all of that was great, but I think it was just after that, and just then hearing the feedback from people about how great it was, and even to start listening to people and seeing what they were doing, in that period, and there's been so many great success stories, with FOGS, people who've gone out and really made their mark in business or in the community. It's just been such a great organisation.
So when did it, in your mind or in everyone's minds, I suppose, go from being, and maybe this is the wrong expression to use, an old boys club, to being an organisation that fosters, from someone on the outside looking in, camaraderie, an organisation that fosters development and fosters community spirit, I suppose?
Yeah, look, I think they were the essential ingredients right from day one. If you look at our constitution, it actually embodies all of those principles, because I think, we had the vision that, FOGS to be long-standing and to be enduring and to be successful, had to have some pillars on which to build the organisation. It wasn't just about getting people together for a drink or to go and watch a game of footy. It was about the power that those people had individually and as a group to be able to go and change people's lives, to be able to continue the Origin spirit, because this is one of the issues we're facing now as a board. We've got to think of the future, and that whole linear progression of, well, who's going to take the baton, and who's going to keep this going. And that's a very important thing, and we needed to have that vision right at the start, to make sure that we had a robust organisation that was focused on a whole range of important things. That camaraderie, the spirit of Origin, the desire, the want to give something back, and just to be, involved still in the game. So they were important, and as I say, if you have a look at our constitution, all of those things are the reasons FOG was created, and they represent the the strategies and the goals that we continue to try and roll out, using different funding methods now, obviously both with the programs that we're running across the board, but then starting to look at some bricks and mortar just to diversify a little bit. Haven't gone into buying hotels yet like the NRL, but I think you need to have those broader strategies to ensure the longevity of FOGS. But succession planning is a big thing, and that succession planning not only with the executive, but also the board. Because we do have a few elderly gentlemen on the board, myself included, and and we are continually looking at, who are the next groups that we need to start bringing in,
and diversifying too, not just being a former players sort of organisation.
Yeah, exactly. Because we do a lot of other things aside from that, and I think the other big thing that's happened, a big strategic thrust over the last probably more 5 or 6, 7 years, has been the embracing of the women's Origin concept as well. So we actually have one of the women's Origin players on our board, and we're looking at expanding that. But everything we do now is about the whole group, not just, we need to do this for the men. If it's being done for the men, it needs to be done for the women. And so that can help broaden the scope as well, both in terms of the input on the board, because everyone's coming in with different views, different perspective, different values, but then we can translate that into the actions that we put out. And
the players are bought in from day one, haven't they?
Absolutely. And I think that's never having been in this position, you can only imagine, right, that you've been selected to play Origin for Queensland. You come to the first day of camp, right? You're actually given a presentation pack that says you are FOG number 187 or whatever it might be, and that's your number for life. Right? No one can ever take that away from you. and you become part of a special group, that only a couple of hundred people in all that time have done, and then I think the women were up to
the mid 100s,
150, 160. So it's just such a special group. You've got a special place in our society. You've got a plaque up outside the stadium. You've got honour boards here that recognise what you've done. You've got merchandise that you can wear around that's got your FOG number on. All those sorts of things. And I think that's just a personal, it's a recognition, at least, an acknowledgement of a personal achievement. I'm not saying people walk around saying, hey, I'm a FOG, so I'm, I think they're very humble in
Absolutely.
in those respects, and very happy to help out with things like the things that these guys do. People don't begin to understand, and the things they're doing out in the community, whether it's the bigger names or even those that maybe not quite as big but are still out there doing stuff and are still giving back, which is a great thing.
Yeah, and Cameron Smith with his 40-odd games is just as important to the FOGs as Corey Horsburgh, the last FOG that's played one game.
Exactly, and I've had a few conversations over the years with a couple who've only played one game when we were trying to get them to come along and to be, they never played one game. I said, people would give their right arm to play one State of Origin game. You should celebrate the fact.
So, Alan, you've had an extraordinary career, as an administrator in sport. You mentioned the Crushers before, and one of, if not the greatest rugby league ground in the world, Suncorp Stadium. Where does your involvement in the birth of FOGs sit in your mind in your list of achievements? What are your thoughts on what you have done to establish FOGs?
That can make me a bit emotional, that question, for a number of reasons. One is, as I said, my close relationship with Tosser and a lot of the other guys, like Gino and Wally and Gilly and, Greg, all those guys, been such a great journey and a great collaboration. But I think just having had that opportunity to be able to do that and to see where it's got to, and like I said, with Gino and Debbie and all the rest of the team over the last number of years have really just taken it to another level. So to see what that's doing is, very, very satisfying. I think, I see it more as, a benefit for Queensland. I see it's obviously a benefit for Origin. Everyone talks about the Queensland Origin spirit. New South Wales would love to put it in a bottle, but they can't. And, it just keeps turning up time after time after time. So it's very hard to describe and very hard to put a specific recipe on. But we know it's based around a whole range of things that all sort of emanated from that first game, and has taken us all the way through. And the pleasing thing for me is that we've seen FOGs be able to continue to carry that baton. Someone's got to carry that lantern, and FOGs keep doing it. We just need to make sure that they do for a long time to come.
Well, we're starting our journey of meeting all of those FOGs over the years to come, I suppose it'll take. Where would you like to see the FOGs, the development of the FOGs continue? Because when you look back to that function, the first function and the tickets to Origin to where we are now, what does the next 10, 15, 20 years in your mind hold?
Well, I think, as I said, there's got to be a regeneration of staff and directors. So, in an ideal world, you want to see some of the more contemporary players getting more heavily involved. As you know, we just put Matt Gillette on in a full-time role, which is great because he's got that link, between some of the older guys, but certainly with a lot of the newer guys. But we need to see that strengthen. We need to see greater involvement from the women. We've got Karen, who's an absolute pin-up, for State of Origin. She's everything that, reflects or represents State of Origin. But there are a few of the other players that we want to see, the women's players that we want to see involved, want to see them get to a point where they become more self-sufficient, in terms of being able to create their own legacy, because they'll have those opportunities with the resources that they are being provided with, and and the QRL are starting to help out from that point of view as well, which is great. But yeah, I think over the next 10 to 15 years, I just like to see firstly that regeneration, secondly just to keep strengthening our programs and our reach within the community, to see a robust rugby league system right throughout the state. That's not necessarily FOG's responsibility, but I think they play a part in it by creating that awareness and setting a standard for people to aspire to, and so I think that's going to be a legacy that can live on, and I think just for FOGs to continue to be recognised as one of the most socially conscious, most successful, and most inspirational sporting groups within the country.
Just finally, a couple of unfair questions maybe. Do you have a favourite Origin moment, Alan, over all the years? Is there one moment that sticks out in your mind? I know these questions without notice are a bit tougher, but...
Look, it is hard. And, anything on Wally's highlight reel. But, having said that, I think probably... There's probably, if I can say three.
Yeah.
I think the try that Wally scored, and I can't remember the year, down in that northeast corner over here.
Oh, over here. Sorry, not the one in Sydney.
Yeah, and he just put the pedal down, and I've never seen him run that fast in my life. And that was just so inspirational. It was what was needed at the time. I think Mark Coyne's try. Everyone's called, Ray called it a miracle at the time, and it was. It was just absolutely amazing. But I think the other one as well that was so exhilarating, made the hair stand up in the back of your neck, was Billy Slater's kick and chase in his first game, I think.
I think it was, yeah. He was playing on the wing,
how much confidence and how much foresight did he have to pull that off? That was just, incredible. So they were probably three standouts. Yeah.
20 years ago, 15 years ago, if I asked you this question, it's an easy answer, the greatest FOG of all. But Queensland just keeps producing them. Is someone knocking on the door for Wally? Cameron Smith, Jonathan Thurston, you keep rattling off those names, Billy Slater. They keep producing them, but is Wally still the king, Alan?
Yeah, look, it's a great debate, isn't it?
I didn't mention Darren Lockyer either, or Greg Inglis. I can keep going, can't I?
Well, that's the thing, and I read somewhere the other day where they're throwing some names out for the next immortal.
Alfie.
Well, there's another. How do you pick? And it's so hard. I all of those guys, just like what Cameron Smith's done. No one's ever going to match that. Alfie. This big and this skinny. That the stuff that he did. On that big stage was just even in his first game. It was like he was out in the backyard at Ipswich. He was having a ball. And all those other players you mentioned. I don't know. Billy Slater. How good. JT. I don't know, but I think the good thing for us is that they're all Queenslanders,
and we've seen them play.
And that they can, they can still be part of FOGs going forward, and they can still make sure that sort of legend continues, and that there will be more Wally Lewis's, there will be more Billy Slaters, there will be more Cameron Smiths to come through.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of kids around Queensland, boys and girls, Alan, that are practicing the chip and chase now to hopefully emulate those players that you've mentioned, and the FOGs will continue to play a role in that. Congratulations on your role in that, and for having that idea many years ago with the great Dick Tosser-Turner to start what is the most extraordinary organisation. Thanks for your time and well done.
Thanks, mate.